Good morning. I'm John Phillips, the chair of the board this year. Since this is a meeting where our board is present, this is technically a meeting, so I want to reflect a roll call that all five of us supervisors are present, as well as a lot of other dignitaries and elected officials. I'd like to welcome you to my district, District 2, welcome you to downtown Castroville, and welcome you to the 2020 census launch. I think Castroville is an appropriate place to have the census launch be committed. District 2 is a rural region of Monterey County and home to many of the communities identified as the hard-to-count populations. In the 2010 census, veterans, immigrants, children under the age of 5, and the elderly, those like us elderly people, were severely undocumented. Monterey County is, as you know, heavily invested in its effort to ensure an accurate count in the 2020 census. We have established a complete count committee in all cities, community-based organizations, and trusted leaders in the community, many who are here with us today, are working together to educate and motivate everyone to participate in the 2020 census. An inaccurate census can affect us in many different ways. Just to name a few, California roads and bridges rely on federal funding, and in fiscal year, California received more than $3.7 billion in highway funding, and census data is used to determine funding for vital programs to better serve our youth, including juvenile justice and delinquency programs, foster care, safe and drug-free schools, just to name a few. I want, before I turn it over to Supervisor Aleo, I want to thank Rosemary Soto, who has put this program together for us. Great job. And at this time, it's my privilege to turn the program over to my colleague, Supervisor Aleo, who has taken the lead on this census count issue and will be the MC for the program. And we may even be able to talk him into saying a few words. So,
thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really an honor to be here in beautiful Castroville, this working-class, blue-collar community that brings us all here together. I want to thank the elected officials, certainly all our reporters, our local press, for making this a priority 1 year in advance. Today, we are proud to launch this united effort among elected officials, community organization and leaders, labor unions, churches, and with every neighborhood across Monterey County to ensure that every man, woman, and child is counted in the 2020 census. Today may be April's Fool's Day, but there's no fooling around when it comes to the census count right here at home and throughout the Monterey Bay region. The U.S. Census, as we all know, only occurs once every 10 years, and our communities and the Bureau all across the Golden State should be working to ensure that an accurate count of our residents. Local governments depend on the census to not only drive the redistricting process, but also the allocation of critical federal dollars, including funding for our schools, hospitals, highway construction projects, Section 8 housing, Head Start, community development block grants, and emergency services, to name a few. California counties, local cities, and the state of California prepared to be partners with the Census Bureau in this process. We are proud that our past Governor Jerry Brown and the California legislature provided over $90 million in the state budget for outreach related to the 2020 census. New Governor Gavin Newsom is now pledging another $40 million for the outreach in this year's budget as well. As county representatives, we not only commend the governor, but urge the Census Bureau to follow his lead and focus on ensuring full participation of all residents, regardless of legal status. There's far too much on the line for Monterey County. We have the largest percentage of non-citizens out of any county in the beautiful state of California. As county supervisors, we represent all our constituents without regard to their political ideology, their gender, their race, their income, and yes, even their legal status. I want to applaud everyone who made today a priority for coming out here to stand together with the commitment that we are going to make sure that everyone is counted here at home. And I also want to take my hat off to Rosemary Soto, the Complete Count Committee organizers, and all of you for helping us ensure that we set the right tone 1 year in advance. I'm honored to have many of my colleagues from different jurisdictions here with us today, my friends in labor and community leaders. To get us going, we want to first invite the office of our congressional champion who's in Washington, but he has a representative to speak on his behalf. We want to invite the office of Jimmy Panetta, Representative Karina Chavez. Give a round of applause, everyone.
Good morning. On behalf of Congressman Jimmy Panetta, who could not be here this morning due to his congressional duties in Washington, I wanted to thank you all for being here this morning to help kick off the launch of the 2020 Census Monterey County Complete Count Committee. The Census Bureau is charged with counting every person living in the United States every 10 years. That's right, every person. The people who contribute to our communities, our country, who also use the same roads we drive on, whose children go to schools with ours. Congressman Panetta has been leading the charge to ensure that we have this right. Because this administration is not making it any easier on themselves to accomplish this important goal. Congressman Panetta said, and I quote, "An undercount of these communities could have a disproportionate impact on the federal share of resources rural and minority communities they receive to pay for critical services such as education, healthcare, nutrition assistance, hospitals, and childcare." He says, and I quote, "Failure to secure an accurate count will be enormously damaging and prove profoundly consequential for decades to come. It is incumbent upon Congress to provide robust funding for the Census Bureau so that the 2020 census has the resources to conduct a complete and accurate count. Congressman Panetta will push hard for additional funding towards the 2020 census to compensate for the funding cuts made by previous Congresses. It is more important than ever to ensure that California and our communities are counted accurately and fairly. Congressman Panetta is also strongly opposed to the citizenship question that was proposed by Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and is hopeful that the courts will find this question unconstitutional. We expect that the Supreme Court will take on this issue late April this month and a decision made in June. Mr. Panetta is a co-sponsor of legislation that would require the Census Bureau to conduct a thorough study on the impacts of this question before adding it to the official census. He applauded the ruling of the U.S. District Judge Jesse Furman about keeping the citizenship question off the 2020 census. He has also led 54 of his colleagues in writing to Secretary Ross expressing concern about the administration's decision to cut in half the number of area census offices and over-relying on technology to take its place. This is especially troubling for our rural communities, our communities where people may not have access to broadband or have experience with the necessary technology. This could lead to a potential undercount of rural immigrant low-income communities of color and traditionally hard-to-count communities for the 2020 census. What is most important in making sure the community is aware of the 2020 census and that they participate. We only harm ourselves and our community if we do not participate in the census. On behalf of Congressman Panetta, I wanted to thank all of you being here today. We have lots of work ahead of us, so let's get to work and get the work out. Thank you.
Thank you. And Monterey County was one of 5 counties in the country to join as plaintiffs in that New York case challenging the citizenship question. April 23rd, I think, is the oral arguments before the United States Supreme Court. Next, we want to invite our state assembly member in Sacramento, Assembly Member Robert Rivas, his representative Dominic Dursa. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Assemblymember Robert Rivas, of course, he was called away to Sacramento today, as normally he's in Sacramento on Mondays. But he just wanted me to share a few brief comments about this census, this important count that's not only being kicked off here in Monterey today, but it's also being kicked off in Sacramento tomorrow. Of course, as we're going to hear oftentimes today, This census is not something that comes often. And it's so important that not only do we get an accurate count, but that hard to count populations that are in our community, whether it be those who are homeless, whether it be those who are undocumented, that we make sure that every person is counted, because it's important that our local governments, our city governments, our counties, our state governments have an accurate way to project what our needs are. So he wants to make sure that our counties have the full support that they need, our cities, and of course anything our office may do, we are always open to the outreach and support that we can give, because it's important that in this 1 year time that we have, we want to make absolutely certain that this census count is not something that we have to look back on and say, what do we need to do better in 10 years? So thank you, and thank you to Supervisor Alejo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next, we are honored to have elected officials from many different cities throughout Monterey County. We have Seaside here, Salinas, Greenfield, Soledad, and Nellie Martinez from Greenfield. Even though she's not on the line to speak today, I thank her for coming and representing Greenfield. But to get us going on for cities, the largest city in the Monterey Bay, we want to welcome Mayor Joe Gunter from the city of Salinas.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you for having this. And as you know, when you have the largest city and your population is somewhere between 150 and 175, depending upon who did the count and when they did it, you worry that we never get counted accurately. We have a very large population. We have a very large population that's hard to count because they're afraid of the government knocking on their door saying, "Hi, I want to know all about you." So sometimes they don't get counted, and this is really a tragedy for them, for our community, and for the entire county. So the city of Salinas, we put some money. We actually took money out of the general fund. We put $15,000 into a fund to help pay, to make sure our action team's out working. They've been meeting regularly. We've included our public works. We've included community development. Every department's going to be actively involved in helping with the count. And I think what's important here is all of the unions that are here, all the teachers, and I really do appreciate all the Board of Supervisors that are here today. You know, I'm sure they all had something better to do. It's Monday, and it's April Fool's Day. They probably had some jokes to pull on somebody. But this is really serious, and I'm glad they're here to help kick this off. And my fellow electeds are here, mayors of other cities that have stepped up, because we understand the significance of what's going on and where the money comes from that provides the service. So when we do this count, let's make sure this year we don't get left behind when it comes to counting the money or at counting the people, which is number one, because if we're going to provide the service, we should make sure that we get our share of the federal money and ignore all the hoopla that's going on in Washington. Sorry, Jimmy, that you're not here to hear me, but we need to build a fence around Washington until they come up with some decent laws for immigration and health care. But so far they haven't done that. But let's take care of our people in this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And at the end, we want people to stay because we want to do a big group picture of Monterey County coming together to support the census. This is a partnership, so we're proud to partner with various community organizations. This one is a very locally grown one who does a lot of advocacy on behalf of working people and farm workers. We're glad to invite Joel Hernandez, the director, I believe, of the Center for Community Advocacy, or one of the organizers.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. My name is Joel Hernandez Laguna. I'm the lead organizer with the Center for Community Advocacy. And before I even start on mentioning something, I want to thank Adam and Rosemary for the opportunity of speaking today. We do have our executive director here, Daniel Gonzalez, who's joining us also as well. But today I want to share with you just a quick story on why community-based organizations are important in this Census 2020. The first thing that I want to talk about is just the importance of sharing a story of my family and I had when we came to the United States, and how misinformation and myths about the census are challenging when reaching our community. In the 2000 census, as a young freshman in high school, you know, living in a community of Acosta Plaza and East Salinas, I really got involved and volunteered in the census because I wanted to make sure that my community was counted. I remember going to my mom and my parents and saying, "Hey, we got these forms and we got to fill these forms out and we got to turn them in." And I remember my mom kind of saying like, well, hold on, like, stop. In the words that she said was, "Ni se te ocurra." Like, it was like, don't even think about it. And at that time, I didn't really understand what that meant. But after a few years, I understood that at that time we had other families living in our home, and it was a fear and the myth of just sharing that information with government and fearing that the government would come to our home and deport the families that were living with us and us having consequences. And we see that none of that has changed throughout the years. There still continues to be a hard to count population. So that's why community-based organizations and other partners in labor and government is important to coming together, because there's a huge collaboration between community-based organizations. There's a trust within the mission and the vision and the values of the organization. Especially a lot of these community-based organizations have been working directly with people for decades. So there's an easy connection, there's an easy trust within those community-based organizations that help people connect and start talking about personally about those myths and misinformation about the census. A few weeks ago, when the Center for Community Advocacy began being engaged in the census, I noticed that those numbers of local communities that I was kind of raised in, Acosta Plaza, Del Monte Avenue, Garner Avenue, were still those hard to count population. And that really hit me. And what I kind of figured out is, and it's not just something that happens in East Salinas, it happens throughout all different cities, throughout the valley, the peninsula, and it happens throughout just around the nation. Which is why community-based organizations play a key role in making sure that the information gets directed and the residents get informed about these myths and realities between the census. You know, this is an important moment because we are now coming together between community-based organizations, government, labor, and other community partners to start breaking some of those barriers and some of those challenges and really putting out the information that needs to be reached to our community. So that's why I think it's important that we're collaborating, we're all coming together, because we all have a different role in this Census 2020. And I truly believe that if we come together a year from now, we'll be ready to knock on some doors, we'll be ready to put some information on TV and the radio to making sure that people have put away those myths and false information and make sure that everyone in Monterey County gets counted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. I said earlier, we're very proud to have all our colleagues from the Monterey County Board of Supervisors joining this effort today. Next to speak on behalf of our Board of Supervisors, we have Supervisor Jane Parker, and also saying some words on behalf of Senator Ana Caballero. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. Yes, it's my honor to read a statement from State Senator Ana Caballero from Senate District 12. She regrets she can't be here in person, but as you know, she has responsibilities in Sacramento. So she did send this statement. She says, every 10 years, each one of us gets an opportunity to participate in one of the fundamental democratic traditions of this country, the census. The 2020 census has been upgraded to make it easier to complete. For the first time, the census can be completed online. Participating in the census is extremely important. The census determines what kind of representation we will have in Congress, what federal funding we will receive for roads, schools, health care, and housing programs. The census provides the most comprehensive view of our population and helps inform what state policies should be created to help every Californian thrive. While today's political climate has created anxiety among many, we will not let the attacks on immigrant communities undermine their voice and power. The challenges with our hard-to-count community are many, but we will persevere and ensure California gets its fair share by getting an accurate count in the census. Be assured that California will continue to work on maintaining the integrity of the census. Ana Caballero says, I look forward to working with all our community partners and stakeholders to achieve the most representative 2020 census count that we can. And on behalf of myself, as county supervisor, my constituents and the residents of Monterey County, I want to just say that Monterey County has a responsibility to provide basic services to allow people to live their lives and thrive. And we rely on community members and community organizations to get those services out and into the community. And so, again, as the county, we are going to rely on you, our community members, our community partners, to help us do outreach and get as full participation in this census as we possibly can. So my message to you is every person counts. And one of the most simple and powerful ways that you can care for your community is to encourage the people that you know and love to fill out the census and be counted. Thank you.
Next, from the beautiful city of Seaside, I want to invite my friend Ian Oglesby to come up and say a few words. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. I want to first start off by thanking the whole county board for having this meeting on such an important topic. We know it's a concern of yours, but to actually hold a meeting, convene a meeting, and talk about it is something that I'm sure all counties throughout the United States are not doing. I know, in fact, they're not doing that. Latinos, African Americans, and Native Americans are some of the most underserved when it comes to the annual census. Every decade, the census count. Not only are they hard to count, we really don't reach inside the communities and make sure we're talking to each group so they can be counted. And we want to make a difference in that. Over 60% of the county population are what you call hard to count. And we need to do a better job to make sure we count for them. I think all of you know that this census is a new census where the outreach is really going to go towards electronically. One of the biggest pushes is going to be electronic method, and that means going through the internet. But only 40% of our residents have access through the internet through a smartphone or through the free local library. And we had to figure out a way to reach in and allow them to do a better job of being accounted for. When we talk about engaging and meeting people where they're at, what does that mean? That doesn't mean do outreach. That means to reach into those communities and actually talk to those people. And when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about strategies on how to get these nonprofits on board. I think to myself, I know in the city of Seaside, we're going to figure out a way that if you're receiving a grant from Seaside, receiving a fee waiver from Seaside, receiving something based on the census, which is just about everything, you're going to get some type of flyer saying the importance of telling your people that you serve to be involved with the census. That's what we have to do. We just can't wait and talk among ourselves for the next year and a half, and then 2 weeks before the census count, we try to reach into the communities. Everybody should know this for starting here today. Every time you talk to the people that you serve, they should be talking about, I'm going to be involved in the census. When the census come around, I'm going to take the survey. When the counter comes to my door, I'm going to answer my door because I'm comfortable with it, because I was made comfortable with being counted for. I just want to say on behalf of Seaside and the citizens of Seaside, we stand so happy and proud to be part of the Complete Count Committee. I want to also thank, again, the Board of Supervisors and the leadership underneath Supervisor Alejo and our County Supervisor Jane Parker on her leadership within our community about getting this thing going. But I'll be remiss if I didn't say a big shout out to Rosemary Soto. I've been knowing her. I've been knowing her for years, and you have the best person to make sure that the county does a complete job. We want to count all people because all people count. We want to count all people because all people count. We want to count all people because all people count. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership, Mayor Oglesby. Next, we're proud to have two of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country representing their local chapters. From the NAACP of Monterey County, Josh Stewart and Regina Mason. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning. On behalf of Josh Stewart in his absence, I am happy to bring greetings from the Monterey County branch NAACP, the oldest civil rights organization not only in the country, but in the county of Monterey. I am also going to read to you something from our national president and CEO, Derek Johnson, who sent this notice out to all the branches throughout the United States. And he says, on this day next year, the census will be taking place. It is important that we fight now to ensure the process is done in a fair and just way that does not hurt people of color and other marginalized community. Why? Because the census results of the 2020 census serve as a basis for redistricting, the enforcement of voting rights laws, and allocating congressional seats to each state. Census population data is also used by the federal government to distribute billions of dollars to local, state, and tribal governments. Unfortunately, the Trump administration continues to underfund and mismanage the census process, laying the groundwork for a dramatic undercount that would dilute the political power of racial and ethnic minorities and deprive communities of color of critical federal funds. None of us can just stand by and allow the Trump administration to use yet another tool to rip away funding from and diminish the political power of communities of color. The NAACP That's why the NAACP is keeping up our fight against the administration in the courtroom. That's why we need you to join us in the battle for a fair census by volunteering with the NAACP to get involved and get the word out about the census in your community. A count of America's population that does not accurately capture people of color is a count that erases our values and our concerns. Every American should be counted, and the NAACP will be on the forefront of making sure that happens. I hope you'll take action today and show up with us. On a local note, in California, in the Census 2020, the NAACP at the state level, through the esteemed California State Conference President Alice Huffman, had all 58 county branches represented on the streets, mobilized in all communities, making sure that our voices were heard and counted. And on another note, I also represent the Village Project. It is a community-based nonprofit organization, and one of our top priorities is to ensure culturally congruent approaches are used to ensure that people get counted. That means that we can't sit back and let others make decisions in terms of how our community is best counted. That means that all of us have to show up from our community to make sure that our voices are heard. And lastly, when the dollars do come tumbling into all of our communities, that we all need to be at the table making sure that the allocation of resources are going to the people that deserve them. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Regina Mason. Here in the Monterey Bay, we have a proud tradition of labor unions that represent working people. Tens of thousands, dozens of unions that represent tens of thousands of workers. We're proud to be in partnership with them. Here representing the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 5 is local leader Pete Maturino. Thank you for being here, sir.
Good morning. My name is Pete Maturino, and I represent UFCW Local 5, which has a membership of around 30,000 members, mostly in retail, but we also have ag, which is the salad plants and the farm workers and things like that. We have about 30 contracts there. Here in Monterey County, we also go to Arizona. We've been talking to a lot of people and getting ready for the 2020 census. And this organization, the International, nationwide, is going to be working hard on one is challenging the citizenship question, which has no business being on that form. But we've been talking to people about how important it is to be counted. And I tell workers when we start talking about the census that's coming up and the form to be filled out, I said you have to compare it almost like your vote. If you want your vote to be counted, even though you're not voting, you're not a citizen to vote, here you are. You're a resident of this county, and you should be counted. You need to make sure that you're counted so we make sure that the political representation that we deserve is there. You need to be counted because we need to guarantee that the social services or any kind of services that are provided to the residents of Monterey County are there. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that everybody's counted. I mean, I'm here to echo basically the same sentiments that you just heard a little while ago on everybody that's coming up. And I think it's very important, and our organization has made a commitment to try to make sure that everybody's counted nationwide and in Monterey County. Specifically here, this is my task here because this is my town. So it's very important, and we're translating this information over to the Latino population, which is very important that they get counted. Thank you.
Our next supervisor, our second youngest supervisor, our newest supervisor, representing South County. Give it up for Supervisor Chris Lopez, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning. I think the important message I want to leave you with is we're not here by accident. Everybody got here today because you are already plugged in. You already understand how this system is working in terms of the networks of information, but there's a lot of neighbors, a lot of friends, and a lot of residents of Monterey County who aren't plugged in the way you are. So I hope that today everybody walks away with the mandate that you're going to go out and at least grab 100 people and encourage them to get involved and spread the word yourself. This is how we get people to turn out, by making sure they understand the importance of getting counted. We've done our piece. We've been all over the place, and I know locally we have champions like Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Yaneli Martinez down in Greenfield, who has put together her own group to spread the word within the community of Greenfield. We can all do more, and I think we have a year to do that, to lift our voices, to make sure everybody understands the importance of what we're doing here with Census 2020. Make sure you get counted. It dictates the next 10 years for us. This isn't something to take lightly. It's something we should all take very seriously. And again, I thank you all for being here as champions of the census. And I hope that we can all walk away with a mandate for ourselves. Pick a number, put it in your head, and be prepared to spread the word. Because every time you shake somebody's hand, that should be the first question as we get closer to 2020. What are you doing? What are you doing? So I know what I'm doing. I'm out there every single day spreading the word when I get the opportunity, and I hope you'll do the same. So thank you all for being champions of the Census 2020.
We're in Castroville today, but we have 4 South County cities. We want to make sure everyone in those 4 South County cities are counted as well, and they're areas that are expected to grow. Here representing the South County cities from the city of Soledad, we have Councilmember Alejandro Chavez. Thank you, sir.
So I want to thank all of you for being here today. Le quiero dar las gracias a cada uno de ustedes que están aquí hoy. Es muy importante tener la representación que es necesaria. Hoy no solamente es en inglés lo que dicen April Fool's Day, pero hoy en México, en otros países latinoamericanos, es el Día del Inocente. Entonces, esa inocencia que existe en nuestras comunidades, debemos nosotros como líderes, nosotros como comunidades, enfocarnos en mover adelante lo que es necesario. Es este cuento que se tiene que hacer, de contar a todo individuo, a toda familia, es muy necesario. So I just want to thank all of you. In Mexico and in other Latin American countries, it's not April Fool's Day, it is Day of the Innocent. And so we can't allow for those voices that may not understand the importance of the census to be undercounted. We need to make sure that we are out there doing our job and really working hard. Folks from Greenfield, folks from King City, folks from South County across the board, Gonzales, Soledad. It is going to be crucial for our communities to make sure that we are doing that work. I thank Greenfield and the group that's working there. I know in our community, Ana Velasquez, one of our council members, has been working really hard in this arena, and as a city we will support and continue to try to make sure that we are doing that job of not allowing for that undercount to really be out there. We want to make sure that people understand and trust this census, because we need to make sure that the resources necessary for these communities get to these communities. It is crucial, especially in South County, especially in Salinas, but across the board. We need to make sure that those numbers are there and they're as realistic as possible. So thank you for today for taking the time to be here, and let's go out there and do the work just like some of the other members have said that we're here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Here representing the oldest Latino civil rights organization, the League of United Latin American Citizens. We have 3 chapters in Monterey County, 1 here in Castroville, 2 in Salinas. But here representing District 12, we have the District 12 Director, Elizabeth Cepeda Gonzalez. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. Gracias y buenos días. Thank you to Univision and all of the channels who are here today. and to all our elected officials. I also want to thank our local LULAC chapters, who are the ones who threw me up here. I definitely didn't want to be here, but anyways, I'm here representing LULAC District 12, but our mission is bigger. Our organization is a national civil rights organization, the largest, in fact, with the largest Latino populations. We're here not only to support, our efforts here locally, but at a national level. And it is ridiculous that we see attack after attack in terms of questions that are thrown into the census. And it is our duty as a community representative to not only bring in our families and organizations like ours and local elected officials, not only every 10 years, but on a more constant basis. Because discrimination for our children and our schools, discrimination at every level is a day-to-day thing. And not being counted, not having the adequate funding to support our schools, to support public benefits, to support any of that is a disgrace not only to our constituents, but those for who can't speak. So if you don't have a voice, si no tenemos la voz, we don't have our votes counted in terms of the census, we're not gonna have appropriate funding. Now, it is our duty to make sure that every family, every individual, every human being is counted. But we also need to make sure that we're fighting back. We need to make sure that that census question is not on the US Census. And how are we gonna do that? We're gonna put enough pressure, and as we are already doing, locally, to our local representatives, many of which are already supporting. Now, at the state level, district, and federally. Because even though our representatives locally may support, we're privileged to be in California. But LULAC is a national organization, and there's other states where we're still fighting voter suppression. So if we're fighting for voter suppression, just imagine what we are against in terms of the census. So now I ask and I urge each and every one of us to have our networks, our local networks, contact our local officials, our state officials, and other national officials who are against those questions, but also to contact those who want that citizenship question on that census, because it is those people's minds that we need to change, and we need to put enough pressure to make sure that we do not have that, are you a citizen? I don't know how it's phrased, but question on the US Census. And that's all I want to say. I also want to thank our local chapters who are here, who are doing most of the work, and to Annabelle, who's amazing in making sure we are all here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the person who's going to be helping us do all the count in Pacific Grove, Monterey, Carmel, Big Sur, our supervisor, Mary Adams. Thank you for being here with us, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, almost everyone. Thank you all for being here today. And I really appreciate very much the words that Elizabeth just spoke, because I do believe that we have a responsibility, all of us, to ensure that that question is not on the census. It has no place being there. I have a lot of thoughts about how we can do this, because many, many years ago, I worked for the Department of Commerce, and I did special census in Monterey County. And I can tell you that there are many different places, even within my 5th district, that house hard to count people. There are people out in the far reaches of the Carmel Valley, many people down along the Big Sur area, people who are living up in the forest that really want to live off the grid. Those are going to be a difficult group for us to reach, but I think we're going to have to come up with some very creative ways to do that. The reason that I think people will end up counting and being counted will happen if we are able to really impress upon them the importance of being counted. And what we have to do is craft our messages so that people understand what it means to them. It means money for fire. It means money for roads. It means money for health care. I think if we can impress upon people in each of the jurisdictions about what it is that from which they will benefit, I think we're going to have an easier way of reaching people. There are a lot of different people in a lot of different parts of our county. I'm very pleased with the work that the jurisdictions are doing, both Mayor Gunter and Mayor Oglesby. I think you guys have really got it when you think about public works people being part of the whole effort. I'm thinking as well from the federal standpoint, anyone who receives Medicare, anyone who receives Social Security, anyone who gets any of the major services that the government now provides should ensure there should be a way of contacting all of the people, that the government should be able to do that. I worry that there is not the support that we need at the federal level for all of us to be counted. And I think that's one of the reasons that the census, that the citizenship question is there. It's our responsibility to ensure that we are all counted. I thank you very much again for being here today. There are so many good things, so many good people. When we all work together, we really can succeed. I think in addition to outreach, though, I think we need to be in touch. So it's not just outreach, it is being in touch. And that's what we need to do, especially for the hard-to-reach populations. All of us have contacts, and that's what we'll need to use. So thank you so very much for being here this morning. It's an honor to be here in beautiful downtown Castroville. Thanks. Thank you, Luis.
One of our other city partners is here today, another great mayor for the beautiful city of Pacific Grove. Give it up for Mayor Bill Peak. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. Appreciate it. And I'm just here to demonstrate the support of Pacific Grove for the census. I know we're a little town, but it's important for all the reasons that speakers before me have mentioned. But you know, there's another reason also. It's a opportunity to find out more information about the community and who we are, and that's important for planning, for land use decisions. And yes, there is diversity in Pacific Grove, believe it or not, and so it's a welcome activity, and we support it. I'd like to thank Rosemary Soto and all the people that are helping her. As any elected official knows, it's a tough job going out and connecting with people you don't know. As other speakers have mentioned, there's distrust, or people are just too busy to be bothered, and we need to overcome that. Thank you very much for being here and all your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll have a couple more speakers, and then we want to do that group shot. Here representing the other very large union here in the Salinas Valley, but they represent workers from the Central Coast to the Central Valley and down La Corrida, the run of migration of work down to Yuma, Arizona. Do we have Crescencio Diaz or Jorge? Okay, so Jorge Valenzuela from the Teamsters Local 890. Give it up for our friends in labor here as well.
Thank you.
He was here, but it's a friend.
Yes, so again, my name is Jorge Valenzuela. I want to thank Rosemary Soto, Supervisor Alejo, and other elected officials here for understanding the importance of the census. As the speakers before me have mentioned, I mean, it's important in divvying up the congressional seats, the seats in the legislature. It's also important in the distribution of the dollars and how they're going to be allocated in the different communities. But you know, some of the things that have been mentioned as well is it also influences business decisions, and it also influences how Social Security administration is going to understand where the money is going to be allocated. And this is especially important for us in Monterey County, especially important for us in California, where we hold the largest proportion of the immigrant community, and that's the largest, and that's the community that's not inclined maybe to participate in the census, and that's why I believe that the work that the elected officials are doing here is so important to ensure that the community is represented, to ensure that the voice is there in the state and the federal legislatures. I just want to say this in Spanish as well, because I want to speak to those communities as well. So, if I may, I'm just going to say it in Spanish. So, lo que quiero decir simplemente es la importancia de participar en el censo. Como estamos viendo aquí, el supervisor Alejo, otros oficiales electos también aquí reconocen la importancia de participar en el censo, porque determina el número de asientos que hay en la legislatura del Estado y el número de asientos que hay en las legislaturas del gobierno federal. Y eso determina la voz que tenemos en la comunidad. También determina cómo los negocios hacen decisiones de dónde van a proveer o construir sus tiendas. Determina el número de dinero que se va a ir a las calles, a las escuelas. Y también determina el seguro social, cómo va a distribuir el dinero y los fondos que van a ir a ciertos distritos. Por esas razones es tan importante que participemos como comunidad en el censo. Porque la última vez que ocurrió un censo fue hace 9 años. Y hace 9 años solamente el 70% de Salinas participó. Eso no es bueno para nuestra comunidad, porque si verdaderamente queremos que todos seamos contados para el mejoramiento de las calles, para el mejoramiento de nuestras escuelas, para el mejoramiento de nuestros hospitales, necesitamos asegurarnos que todos participemos en el censo. Entonces, por eso le hago un llamado a la comunidad a que participe. Y si tiene preguntas de cómo hacerlo, puede contactarse con nosotros. Vamos a estar ahí para ayudarlos también. Pero otra vez, gracias a Rosemary Soto y a todos los legisladores que están aquí por entender la importancia, y le hacemos el llamado también a la comunidad a participar. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge President Crescencio Diaz, who is here with us as well for supporting this effort. Last two speakers. Our area is going to be honored to have up to 5 partnership specialists under the Census Bureau. When we met in Washington just in early March, we met with the Census Bureau. We also met with the Department of Commerce, which the Census Bureau is under. We had an important meeting talking about how important having a local office and having more resources was to ensure an accurate count in Monterey County. But 2 of the partnership specialists that have been hired and that we want everyone to get to know, because we're going to be relying on them to really have a successful turnout in Monterey County. We have Tori Del Favero and Cristina Granados. Thank you both for being here. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Monterey County. You guys get it. Your hearts are full. Your heads are in the game. It has been an honor to watch your civic engagement taking place around the census, being brilliantly led by Rosemary Soto and her Complete Count Committee and all the action teams that have spawned out from that. It is a pleasure. Christina and I are both here to support you and make sure that you have a full and accurate count in Monterey County, and make sure that Monterey County gets their fair share.
Hi, I'm Christina, also with the U.S. Census Bureau. Mi nombre es Cristina, con la Oficina del Censo de Estados Unidos. Y participar en el censo es la manera que verdaderamente damos forma a nuestro futuro. Es la manera en que distribuimos 675 billones de dólares que impactan servicios críticos en nuestra comunidad, incluyendo educación, salud y transporte. Así que les doy las gracias por estar aquí apoyando este esfuerzo para cerciorar que cuente con todas nuestras comunidades. Gracias.
Okay, lastly, I just want to really thank our Assistant CAO, Nick Chulis from the county, all the Board of Supervisors staff, Josh Stratton, my whole team, Mary Adams and Jane Parker's and Chris Lopez's team for also being here. We couldn't do it without you. We're setting the right tone, we're setting the right image, but there's no better image for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram than to take one all together right here in front. So please join us. Give everyone a round of applause, first of all, and then let's take a group picture, everyone. So please join us, and thank you, Supervisor Phillips, for hosting us here at your office.